Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you.
Hello and good afternoon. It is just about afternoon, isn't it? Is it? No.
1 minute ago. Countdown.
It's the final. How are you, Philly?
Very well, actually. Yes, very good.
I'm all right. I've got a little bit of polleny eyes today. I think that counts up.
That's the official medical term. Dear doctor.
Yeah, I don't know what else it would be, to be honest. Although I did stay up quite late last night watching Eurovision.
Yes, I didn't have the strength. Although it was enough to see the WhatsApp chat, quite frankly, and to know the madness that entailed.
It's getting madder every year. I have to say, I think it's more a vote on madness than music, I think.
Sometimes we just need the big release. Sometimes we need somebody floating up on a giant microphone.
Exactly.
In a barely a leotard.
There was some very random events. Anyway, we did not do well as the UK, but
creativity shouldn't always be constrained. Sometimes it should, but sometimes you gotta reach for it. You can always pull back. But although I don't think they do.
They really didn't.
No.
I particularly loved the Swedish sauna madness.
Right.
That was pretty.
Well,
mad.
for those of you who didn't watch it, we can just let our imaginations run riot.
Anyway, we're talking about something, sort of serious today. Although actually, it's a topic that I think people should enjoy more than they do, but we don't tend to.
Do you know what I was thinking about? So we're going to talk about interview skills, and we're going to do 2 episodes on this.
We love it.
We love it. We're going to do a fundamentals, and then we're going to do an advanced episode. And I was thinking about it this morning, and we're going to talk about this, how the culture of getting jobs has changed so much anyway. The whole work, the whole marketplace has changed. And I was thinking, really, the word interview doesn't really sum it up anymore. It's really interaction skills.
Yeah.
That it's skills that, maybe back in the day, let's start with this, just the context. Back in the day, you may have had one interview in your life at some point, and then maybe you'd have a few, like a handful. Nowadays, the level of sort of networking, hub, project, entrepreneurship, again, we'll talk about that more widely in terms of traditional job markets, but really, you're basically interviewing yourself all the time. So that practice of shifting and adapting the way that you talk about your personal profile and your company profile is happening all the time.
And also what's really interesting about what we do, and it's interesting, I don't really think about it in terms of continuing the interview, but that is what we do, is of course we can connect the dots so easily, both in terms of what people do and how people need to show up, but also in terms of literal network connections. So because we have so many conversations, I generally always know somebody that is related to perhaps the interview that the person is preparing for.
Yeah. So that whole network piece.
The whole network piece is so super useful.
So to finish that wider context piece, you're starting to see quite a lot of this online. That idea that your children or your teenagers can go to university, get a degree, leave and get a graduate job.
With a sort of standard interview process.
It's rare. People are saying it's over. Yeah. And I say that sort of with a slight pause because I can also imagine that's quite frightening for quite a lot of people, that actually that's the model that we have grown up with. It's the model that we've sort of filtered into the education system. Get this degree, there'll be a kind of graduate fair, or however your university does it, and then you'll pick your companies, you'll go and have interviews and hopefully get a nicely paid job because you've got big debts and you've done your time at university. And there just aren't the number of jobs now. You know, the stats are anything from your 1 in 150 to 500 people going for a job. I mean, the stats are crazy. So,
or certainly the traditional type of job.
The traditional job. But why, this is my point though, what I would say is, even if you're going for I'm doing bunny quotes for those of you not watching, even if you're going for a traditional job, you still need to be thinking about yourself as a solopreneur, a self-starter going into partnership. Yeah. What are you bringing? How are you meeting that company's needs? So we'll talk about that, but it's a real mindset shift. You're no longer trying to prove to a big organization that they need you as a cog in their company to sort of do things. You're now meeting people and having a conversation about the value add and partnership, what's possible if you come and work for them. What are you going to bring? What are your ideas?
Yeah, and we'll talk a lot more about that on the second episode of these two podcasts, because that piece particularly feeds into our technique in terms of how we answer questions. So we'll talk a lot about that. We're going to do a bit more of a kind of a context set, the preparation piece and the impact piece in this first one. And then we're going to dive into the real kind of strategic question answering in the second one, which is probably one of my favorite coaching topics.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of it.
I do a lot of it. And it's just so interesting, the pitfalls that people fall into time and time again. So we'll talk about those on the second episode.
You know, if someone asks you about your weaknesses, the danger is you'll tell them.
So that's exactly right.
You know, you've got to be ready.
That is not really what that's asking.
It goes back to when we'll come to it next time in the next episode. But just to tease it reminds me of a quote that's often used in media training, which I think was attributed to Churchill, which was something like, "I've prepared my answers for the questions that you're going to ask," meaning it doesn't matter what you ask. I know what I need to say in this interview, and I'll find a way.
Exactly,
to make sure
and it's not what are your weaknesses, or I'm really lazy.
Or you know, why were you out of work for a year? Or because I couldn't get a job. Or equally,
just
gaps in CVs. Those are opportunity. Anyway,
it all comes back to narrative, doesn't it?
Narrative. Okay, we're going to come back to that. So preparation. So preparing for an interview. So I would say, firstly, spread the net wide in terms of who you go for.
Yes.
You don't want to be narrowing, thinking that's not my sort of sector.
Yes.
Sectors are sort of done equally. It's about skill set. It's not about knowledge. I don't know anything about you know, the tech industry. Not the point. The Reed Consulting did a survey. Must be well over a decade.
This was one of the first I remember quoting when I started doing this work.
It must have been so 13, 14 years ago, where the days of knowing things about something is done. It's mindset. You can learn the actual tasks, and you can learn the nuts and bolts of the knowledge of an industry. It's mindset. And of course, now the mindset is very innovation, ideas, quick to pivot, action orientated, systems thinking. So it's mindset. It's possibility mindset.
And I would certainly say, related to that, if you haven't had a lot of experience being interviewed, either because you're young and early in career, or perhaps because you've joined a company and you had one interview back in the day and you haven't had any experience since then, I guess one thing I would offer is think about the opportunities you've got to step into interviews. And it doesn't have to be because you definitely want to change job or definitely want to get a promotion. I think it's really useful to have a mindset of, can I have the conversations with these people? Can I network with them? And can I step into an interview, even if I perhaps don't think I'll get the job, or even if I'm not looking to change at the moment. I think too often we probably veer away from having interviews because we feel a bit nervous, or we feel like we're not good enough to get the job. I would check in with yourself first of all. The people I know who sort of courageously step into having interviews, even if they don't get the job, they are getting themselves known. They are getting the experience in terms of those conversations, and even if so valuable.
Even if you don't want the job, I would absolutely agree. Particularly in this day and age, we are not spending all of our time just constantly bumping shoulders over water coolers. No, if you can get in front of people to have a conversation, have the conversation.
Totally.
Because
that's the opportunity.
That's the opportunity. You don't know where they're going to end up. You don't know where they're going to go. We've learned, I'm sure many of you listening have learned over careers, people move, people change. We've got a fabulous friend who was also a colleague many years ago, who's working for an organisation now, and that went through various conversations, and the role changed, or the role disappeared, or the role was adapted over a period of time. The person in the organisation liked this friend of ours so much they could absolutely see what they could bring creatively, and they are spot on, because she's so creative and so good at what she does that they just kept her in mind, and 3 times that they came back to try to find the right thing, and they eventually did. And those are the conversations that are happening.
But that's what you want. And we talk about this in our personal profile series and sort of self-brand and self-PR, is that, I mean, ultimately, the ideal scenario, of course, is that you've got people knocking on your door saying, what job would you love to do in my organisation, rather than you having to, going through that formal interview process. So ideally, on a longer term basis, that's the kind of network and relationship you want to be building up. But for now, in these 2 episodes, we are going to talk specifically about a more formal interview process.
And it's important to say this is absolutely for early in career graduates, equally for people who've been in the game long enough. We help people
very senior
enter the market, and we also help people at very senior level who are looking to take over global roles. So this is for anybody. And if you can think of anybody who you think might benefit, please do send this on. And I want to plug quickly now before I forget, and we will plug it at the end. We have a personal profile series on our digital platform, 4D On Demand, and it's called Personal Profile. And the Personal Profile series has got lots and lots of pieces in there around personal brand and narrative. And it also has a huge amount, a really nice chunky set of modules on your online profile, blogs, posts, CVs, the tracking system for interviews. So it really touches into how can you get your foot through the door? How do potential employers see you? We will follow that up fairly soon with another series on purely on interview skills. But that is that's going to be available to buy by the summer, a click to buy, that personal profile series. And that is an amazing series, probably with the impact series. If you've got anybody early in career or really any stage who are looking to do job interviews, those 2, impact and personal profile, you will have an absolute treasure trove of tips and tools.
So today we probably won't speak about the CV and any sort of covering letter, those more sort of formal pieces. But like Philippa said, you can find that on our platform. What I would speak about in the sort of the pre-prep bits, probably 2 or 3 things I would think about. The first one is what we just spoke about, which is have the confidence to apply and step in, even if you feel like you're perhaps not perfectly qualified.
Or catch the bias. Yeah. Either I don't tick all the boxes. There is the gender split on that, of course. Yes. There has been research, and again, this is that it was done on a gender male-female split, but I'm very aware of holding that in a much broader context.
Well, also, it was done quite a while ago.
And it was done quite a while ago. But regardless, some people will look at the number of boxes they do tick. Oh, I've got 6 out of 10. I'm definitely going for that. And some people will look at the boxes they don't tick. Oh, I haven't got 4 of them. I won't. Yeah. So just notice what happens for you, because you may well not apply, and somebody who ticks 5 boxes gets the job, and that's a real wasted opportunity.
Totally. The second thing I would say, and again, we're not going to talk about your sort of your online presence in terms of social media. That's a whole other topic. But the second thing I would say, aside from having the confidence to step in and apply, the second thing would be find out about the company, find out about the people interviewing you, look at their online profile, whether that's LinkedIn or something else, get curious, get some information about who these people are.
Definitely.
And, even if you're going through a headhunter, possibly think about dropping them an email or connecting on LinkedIn and say, I'm interested in your organisation and going through a process, wanted to connect.
Yeah.
We often don't do these things because we think, well, that's not the process. I must follow the strict process. But again, I would think of it much more relationally.
Absolutely. And those are the people that are complete game changers when it comes to people who've approached us. I've looked at your website, absolutely loved it, really want to know more about this, that, or the other. Can you tell me how I can, find out this, that, or the other? And I'd love to hear more about this specific area of your business. I mean, anything like that, it immediately breaks down that barrier that a lot of people do. This is slightly more in sales, which is just the generic the generic email of, I'm in social media marketing. Would you like to make an appointment with me?
Yeah.
No, because you haven't looked for the connections. Do you live somewhere where, are you in the same area as one of those recruiters? Did you used to work or know one of the companies that they used to work for?
Do you have a mutual acquaintance?
Any number of things. Did they do a post on hiking? Oh, you're a hiker too. Anything. Yeah. Exactly. Look for the connections.
Yeah. So that's the second thing. And I guess the third thing, before we get on to the actual sort of interview itself and the setup we have, I guess the third thing would be, building on that second thing, is really trying to approach it from a space of curiosity and interest rather than
a test.
A test, exactly that. A test. That's exactly how most of us look at interviews.
Yeah, they didn't like me.
Yeah, I must pass this test. Yeah. I must have, and I mean, psychologically, in terms of where that's putting you and putting the interviewer or the panel, I mean, already as a kind of starting point and platform, it's usually a huge disadvantage to put yourself in that mindset. So it's a conversation rather than a test.
I was going to bring in my analogy.
What was I going to say? I was going to say a cell, but actually I like test better because that's how it feels.
Yeah, that's how it feels. I'm going to bring in the analogy with acting auditions later, because there's so many really useful crossovers because you're doing so many auditions when you're an actor, and they're so raw because you don't even have a CV really to fall back on.
And you're literally kind of
it's just you are selling yourself. But one of the things that you say there around what happens when you set it up as a test in terms of the status and the roles that you've just set is you're basically saying to them, do you think that I'm good enough to work with you? And the acting analogy is really, really good because Bear's giving it a shake up. Because you walk into...
He's got no fur to
shake. You walk into an audition, and whether it's for a piece of theatre or particularly for a piece of film or television, there's a lot of money riding on any of these productions.
Yep.
They're high risk. You've got a very short time to rehearse and prepare and to make. Well, you've got a very short time to make an impression in the audition, certainly. But in the actual job, you might have 3-4 weeks if you're in theatre to rehearse. If you're going into a production, film or television, they have got to know that you can turn up on the day as the cameras are rolling and the money is just draining second by second.
Do it and deliver.
So what they don't want in the room is, do you think I'm good enough? They want to know you're going to show up, bang, deliver, and not just be on time, but probably save them time so that they can bank time on an expensive production. There is no time, and I think it's really significant nowadays as well for, let's see, you're not quite there yet, but we can probably help you get there. I think, again, those days are, you've got to meet on a level playing field, you've got to meet across the table. This is what I've got, this is what I'd bring, this is what I'd love. And even if you don't feel that, even if you feel like all the big people with the power, and of course there's a power, but there's something about reframing that to, they need the good people to work for their company. Yeah. They are dependent, any organisation is dependent on finding great people, as we know.
Totally. Well, also I would say, and we'll talk about this much more in the second episode, that of course we sort of can have the mindset that an interview is a test, and we've got to demonstrate that we've got the experience to do the job. It's so unlikely you'd be sitting in front of the interviewer if you didn't have the experience to do the job. I mean, their filtering process would have to be...
Well, it's especially nowadays.
Appalling for that to happen. Yeah. So it's sort of taken as a given. Yeah. I mean, really what people are looking for is much more about your attitude and the relational aspect.
Do I want to work with this person?
And, will they have the right attitude and relationship style, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really doing ourselves a disservice if we look at interviews as a test, because it's not really what they are, and therefore we're showing up to something that isn't what we think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So
let's think about being in the interview itself.
Well,
maybe.
First impressions. So I'm going to do my second analogy to auditioning, because I went to RADA and then I taught at RADA for a while, and what I taught was confidence and audition technique, really specifically. And so this was obviously for younger people entering the profession. The big thing that I think was one of the huge takeaways was that first impression. Because what we tend to do is to take in what some of the feelings are for us quite naturally, which is
terror.
Oh, yeah. Well, which is, oh, it's me. I'm here. We're doing this. This is an interview.
The spotlight's
on me. I haven't had one for a while. Oh, my goodness. And so we take that into the room, and how that manifested with young actors was they'd open the door and poke their head round and go, hello. Like, because for them it was a unique moment of it's me and I'm here and you're here and oh my goodness, this is a thing. But of course for the panel, it's the most they're like, you're the 50th person. There's nothing unique about someone poking their head and being a bit nervous. Nothing unique about that. In fact, you just added yourself to the long list of people who've poked their head around the door nervously and gone, oh, hello, can I come in?
Or something like apologising or saying, shall I come in? Or,
yes.
And coming online and the tech not quite being ready or being a minute late and apologising.
And for you, that's a sort of unique experience and feels authentic because it's how you're feeling.
Yes.
For them, it's just, there's two things. There's 100 times they've seen it. And the second thing is, inadvertently, you're messaging to them, can you take care of me, please?
Yes.
Because I'm nervous and this is the first time. So you've already set the status gap.
Yeah.
So that first impression absolutely counts. So whether you're walking into a room, shoulders back, walk in, don't take any unzipped bags in there or too many pieces of paper or any props, same as an actor, that you could drop.
I'd never get a takeaway coffee.
No, takeaway coffees.
To an interview. I mean, even when I'm going to meet a client, particularly for the first time, I mean, I have made the mistake in the past, and it's just fumbling.
Yes.
Just chaotic fumbling.
We do have a story, no names mentioned, but somebody very close to us who, had an interview in London and was very fortunate that there was a very friendly Marks and Spencer's assistant who I think almost opened the shop early, and he had 10 minutes to get a new shirt and did, but, with the creases. But anyway... So you don't want that stress.
Just to think about what you're
think about exactly how you're helping yourself. So, walk in, make eye contact, depending on the culture. Obviously, in the West, we put our hands out to shake our hands. But one of the easiest ways when you're in person to know what the protocol is in terms of, are we shaking hands or what are we doing here, is to pay attention to what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That they'll signal.
Yeah.
They'll signal to you. So,
exactly.
So just be ready and open. And obviously online, I'm going to pass to you for appearing online. So you've switched on, you'll join the call.
All right. So
what do you not want to say?
So the big pitfalls.
The big pitfalls. A quick word from us at 4D Human Being. If you're enjoying the show, please do click follow so that you can have the 4D Human Being podcast instantly in your feed. And we'd love it if you liked and reviewed us. Let us know what you think. Please do think of one or two people that you could share the 4D Human Being podcast with. Somebody who would really benefit from the content you're listening to right now. Back to the show.
Are background, first of all. Really do think about what your background is. It matters. Even if you think it shouldn't matter, it does matter. So decide in advance where you're going to have your laptop and what's going to be behind you. Yeah. That is your first impression in terms of who you are and how you operate. Yeah. It matters.
Yeah.
That's the very first thing. Of course, the framing. So just make sure that you're well framed on your computer screen. It's not just like sort of the top of your head that people can see.
You want solar plexus, sort of mid-chest, sort of just above your stomach up at least, and you want your arms to be able to be seen.
Yes. Get your tech sorted beforehand. So if you have to do a practice call with the headhunter or with a friend, get the tech sorted out beforehand. I cannot tell you how many times I see people sort of fumbling over tech and audio coming on to
Have a phone backup. Have your phone or your iPad ready to do a backup.
I know it's not always easy, and we're all using sort of multiple platforms online. It's really boring to have the 10th person come on and the audio doesn't work.
Well, you're like, that's not interesting either. Can I also add to that you might use, I don't know, WebEx or Zoom or Teams, but that organisation might use Blue Jeans.
Yeah.
And so have you checked the invite for the tech that they're using? Yeah. Google Meet, any number of things. I had a particular one the other day, I think through one of our clients that I'd never used before. And then you need to download the app.
Yeah.
You don't want to be doing that on the hour.
No, so just get the tech sorted. The other thing I would say is watch the first things that come out of your mouth. Usually online, the words I hear first are sorry.
Yeah.
What's the first word? For anything. Any number of things, the first word is...
That reminds me, because I'm a Downton fan, as we know, that reminds me of one of Maggie Smith's beautiful lines when Penelope Wilton's character walks in and says, only me. She goes, oh, I always think that greeting communicates such a low level of self-esteem. But, you know, it's that, isn't it? Oh, only me. Sorry. Hi. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so those are a few things to think about. They sound really obvious, and you'll all know from meetings that you have day to day at work that they're the pitfalls we fall into.
I would have a pen and paper ready. I always do that, even, you know, not even, but on a podcast. Definitely on client calls. I want to have a piece of paper and a pen. I want to be making notes.
Yes.
Because nothing more fabulous, and actually ideally out of shot. So which you can do easily.
Yeah.
You can have no one has to see your writing. In fact, ideally you don't want that. You just want to be able to not even look at the paper, but just a quick note. So that something that's been said in the first 10 minutes that you think, I definitely want to come back to that. I know we've moved on to my background or history, but that is a really good, I really want to let them know about this project that they've got. I know they've got in their company and how I can help make notes, because those are what we call reincorporations look genius. I want to go back to something you said earlier, Brian, which I really loved, and I made a note of it, and I want to talk about how what I could see happening with that and what I could bring to that project. Lovely.
It's absolutely genius in terms of what it's doing to the other person's brain.
And ego.
Even if you just note down some words that they've used, even if there are no particular sort of big concepts you want to weave back in, note down some words that they use, which of course you should do in terms of the job spec as well in advance. So I would always go through a job spec with a client and highlight some key words. And by that, I don't mean sort of technical words. I mean words that will give me a really good indication of the type of leader or type of culture that they're stepping into. Well, you've got to use those words.
Yeah, well, there's some real psychology in that, because there's something that happens in influencing, and equally in something like counselling or coaching or therapy, is if you feed back to somebody sort of similar but different words to what they've used, it really breaks that relationship. So if someone says to you, oh, you know, I was really into ballet as a child. I loved the grace of that classical dance style. And you feed back later on, of course, because you like dance, you like the sort of beauty of dance, didn't you? That is not the same as feeding back to them, well, of course, you know, you were a real ballet fan, and I really get the grace. The grace of ballet is really special, isn't it? That is a completely different communication experience. So exactly that. If they're talking about their organisation as dynamic and fun, and you go back and say, well, you know, because you've talked about it being sort of playful and energised. They haven't. No. They've talked about it being energized, dynamic and fun. Yeah, they've talked about it being dynamic and fun. Exactly.
Absolutely. So it's a really interesting point. I mean, it sounds like it might be on the periphery in terms of importance, but it's actually not, because of how our brains are coded linguistically. If you use exactly as you said, if you use exactly the same words, it is significantly different in terms of what the other person feels and hears versus if you use a synonym,
exactly,
a similar word.
Very different. And what you're saying is there's two things happening there. One is, of course, listen, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about more. The second thing it's doing is saying, I am part of your tribe.
Yeah.
I belong to you. We speak the same language.
Yeah.
And I mean, at a fundamental Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I mean, that is doing things that no amount of, look how many, you know, tech skills I've got.
Yeah. Well, it also goes back to Robert Cialdini's influencing styles and influencing techniques as well. And of course, the number one thing is he uses the word liking, but within that, it's both compliments, but it's also similarities and shared goals. Mm-hmm. And I love it when Matt talks about this in the room, and he often uses the example when you go on holiday somewhere and occasionally you bump into people, either perhaps you know them or perhaps they're just, you know, the same nationality as you and you're in a foreign country. What you'll do is you'll start talking immediately to try and find the things that are similar. Where are you from in the UK? Yeah. Who do you work for? What do you do? And you're trying to find the crossover as quickly as possible. Yeah. And there's a really good reason that we do that. It's because we will tend to want to hang out with people and be with people where we can find some similarity and crossover. And interviews are no different in that respect. Yes, of course, you have to demonstrate that you can do the job. But really subtly, what's sitting underneath is, are we in the same tribe? Do we share similar values, or do we share similar activities? And so using language to demonstrate that is just genius.
So listen to what's being said, and listen to what is not being said. So listen to, for example, somebody asks a question. You've got 2 or 3 people on the panel. Somebody asks a question, and you notice that another one of the panel members looks at that person and really nods. This is an important question now.
Yes.
They've
obviously had a chat about that beforehand.
You've just been told you are hitting a crux point in a turning point in this interview. So you are being signaled. So imagine if you're asked that question and you're thinking, oh, crikey, what shall I answer to this? And you just see somebody nodding and going, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then looking at you intently, really want to know the answer. I would immediately say that is such a crucial, such an important question.
Exactly.
I'm so glad you asked that. That feels, and I'm putting my hand on my heart as I say it. So you've got signalers to not just land with them on the answer to the question, but to land on them of the meaning behind this.
And this is something that we'll definitely build on the second episode, which is, we always like to think about our work, and particularly, I think, in interview skills, in terms of what we call the integral map. So that's the multi-perspective map. So think of a 4-quadrant with I in one box, you in another box, we as a collective in another box, and it in another box, which would be the role or the organisation. That sort of objective third-party thing. And of course, what we'll tend to do when we go into interviews is we've prepared our CV, we've practiced. We're in the I box.
We're in the I box. Look at what I've done.
Yes. And then, of course, the questions will be, can you tell me a bit about yourself? What experience? So the questions are inadvertently trying to push us into the I box.
Yeah, they're coming from the you, and we answer in the I.
So we'll very often make the, I think, big mistake of just sitting in the I box. And what you've just spoken to is notice the you box and notice the we box. What's going on in front of you, and what can I respond to and collectively weave in. And this is all about flicking the spotlight onto the other people. So yes, of course the spotlight is going to be on you a lot of the time. Of course you need to talk about yourself. You do not want to be doing that 100% of the time. You've got to be flicking that spotlight on the organisation and the people in front of you.
You can actually almost have an image in your head of a circle with an I in, right next to it, touching it, a circle with a you in, and both of those are in a we, and both of those are in an it. And you absolutely need to talk to all 4 of those. So both you and the recruiters or the HR, whoever you're talking to, the business leader, both of you are sitting within the we space, the collective. This is what it will be like. This is what it will be like when we work together, and when we work together as part of this team.
What's important to us.
And then the it, which is the business, the organisation, the project,
the value I can drive. For
exactly, the mission statement, the products, whatever it is.
Because, and we'll talk really specifically in the second episode about some real kind of nitty-gritty, tangible examples of how to answer these questions using this integral map. But the pitfall is that we have in our head, maybe subconsciously, but going to an interview, we have in our head, I need to talk about myself. I'm going to be in that I space. Honestly, how interesting is it for somebody to sit there for 45 minutes and listen to someone talking about themselves? Honestly, I'm sure we're all fascinating human beings. But honestly, do you want to sit in front of somebody talking about themselves for 45 minutes?
Certainly not on a date. Actually, you want to think about it more like a date, don't you? Which is, you don't want to be talked at. And actually, this brings us to a really important piece within interview skills. Absolutely name the 2 or 3 things. No more than 3, thank you. They've got your CV in front of them. Story.
Yes.
You want to walk into that interview with at least 3 peachy cracking, nice chunky stories, life-changing moments where you learned, moments where you fell down, picked yourself up, cracked on, the moment you helped someone else achieve what they needed to achieve.
That have relevant sort of meaning and learning.
Yes,
exactly.
And this is in the storytelling 4D on demand. There's some fabulous tools in there around find your theme. So if you're going for a team leader role, then you might find a theme around motivation or the collective or working together.
Or it might be they're looking for somebody who's going to transform the business.
Might be transformational, might be sales. You want to find your theme, and you want at least 2 or 3 stories that you have got ready in your back pocket, and you're looking for the opportunities to tell them those stories. So tell me the 3 things that you've are most proud of. I'm going to tell you those. First of all, I want to tell you a story.
Yeah.
So you want to have your stories ready, because immediately you've bought my time.
Yeah.
Because everyone else will have said, okay, number 1, which is fine, you can get there.
3 things is also
3 things is also very useful.
So you definitely want some story, and we'll talk about how you can use story to answer questions in the second episode. I would say on that, it's quite difficult often for us to gauge and track how long we should speak for. And I get that question quite a lot from people. What's too short? What's too long? There's no definitive on this. So don't think that there's a perfect
Except don't be too long.
Except don't be too long.
People talk too much.
I mean, even if you are too short in your answer, even if it's too pithy and short, you can always say at the end, I can go into that in more detail if that would be useful.
Absolutely.
Better to do that and then ask that question. If you've been talking for more than 3.5 minutes, I would say you're heading into the danger zone.
Stop talking.
Well, I mean, if you just have a chat with a friend and just click the timer on as they're talking to you about what they did last night or whatever, just notice how long 3.5 minutes feels to the other person listening. It's a long time.
Yeah. And at the very least, if you think, I think I'm talking quite a bit, just take a moment, don't panic, take a moment and say, I'm wondering if, or ask a question. I'd love to know from you.
More,
there's more I could say on this. Would you like to hear it? Or I'd love to hear from you what the specific area that you'd really like to hear about. So you can always ask a question, because at least you're going to wait. If they've fallen asleep, at least you're going to get them back. Okay. So we're going to move on to some impact and body language and a few tips that are just kind of really cracking to do.
My number 1 is shoulders.
Yes. Okay. Go on. You go.
Oh, my number. In fact, I'm sort of well known within my client community.
Penelope shoulders back.
That is exactly what I'm known as. And my clients, some of them know each other and they kind of laugh. Yeah. Shoulders? Yes. She says the whole shoulders. Yeah. I know it sounds obvious. And particularly when we're online, it's often the thing that lets us down. Yeah. And it's just unconscious. So shoulders back, shoulders back, shoulders
primal.
back.
Anybody who's watched any documentaries on monkey tribes, guess what? It's not the hunched down monkey who ends up being head of the tribe. It's so primal, isn't it? So, shoulders back. I remember...
Doesn't mean you have to be really, really stiff, but just notice your posture.
I'm going to go back to something. I was laughing with a friend of mine. I was at drama school with her and we met up the other day. And I was reminding her, the principal had said to us, you can tell a RADA student 100 yards down the road. And he meant shoulders. Yeah. His posture.
Well, I remember you did years of Alexander technique.
Yeah.
And I remember us talking at the time when we were much younger about how much there was around the physical and the voice rather than sort of jumping into costumes and
100%.
The physical and the breath and all of these things and the posture. It was so important in terms of impact.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other piece. And that's in our impact series, voice. If you open an interview with, hi, it's like, I mean, what can we say? And also talking too fast. I mean, the voice is a whole other topic, but it's such a specific topic that I think
we have done some podcasts on voice. So we probably won't dive into that.
Check those out. Yeah. I've got 2. So one of mine is names.
Oh, yeah.
So you will not only have the status of you in the room, there'll be a status between your interviewers if there's more than one. Yeah. So a really lovely thing to do is to get you, because you want, both of my tips here are about making sure you're not dividing the panel. So really easy, as it is in life, in meetings, for our attention to go to the person we think has got the most influence or is the decision maker. We might be wrong, of course. So you might be completely screwing out.
And I would tend to offer you've got to use all of each of their names at least once.
Exactly.
In the interview.
You definitely want to say their names. If you're online, you should have the benefit of having their names at the bottom of their little square, like on Celebrity Square, game shows. But you definitely want to have checked that before you go onto the call. And equally, when you walk into the room, make sure that when you shake hands or say hello, that you clock, you work out their names, make a mental note to yourself. It's so important. And if it's a pronunciation that you're unsure about, have the courage to say, "Oh, can I just check? Is it Shemika or Shamika? Can I just check that?"
Yeah.
Like, check it. People appreciate it. You know, I have a name that's spelled very differently. I always say to people when they say, "Is that 1L2Ps?" I say, "Spot on, and thanks for asking. What a great question." We like
Our
it.
names are important.
We like it when people bother.
Yeah.
So names. And the second one is eye contact. Now, I don't just mean eye contact as in make it, although yes. do make eye contact.
And watch out for that, because of course when we are slightly panicky or lost in thought or trying to come up with an answer, we go back to our school days when we're chewing our pencils and staring at the floor or the ceiling. I see it so much.
Yep.
The eye contact goes.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel strange to you as the interviewee, because you're used to moving your eye contact away when you're thinking. It starts to look really weird.
Absolutely.
To the interviewer, and it also signals a lack of confidence.
Absolutely.
So try to stay locked in.
Stay making eye contact. And even if you're trying to think consciously, keep smiling and looking at your panel or your interviewers, and just have filler words. Okay, so this is a question that I really have been thinking about, and I'm really pleased it's come up. Just get your filler words in, because that will give you some space.
And by filler words, we don't mean the ums and the ers.
No,
we
sorry,
mean the
good
conversation.
Yes, keep the conversation going with generic appreciation of the question. It was really important that I'm really glad that you brought this up. Sort of more thinking general statements about the question. The thing about eye contact that happens in interviews a lot is you end up getting locked in with the person who's asked you the last question. So you've got to think about eye contact like candy, and you don't want to give all the candy to one person, because everyone else is sitting there feeling like, why don't I get some of the candy? I'm not going to bother listening.
And they
or I'm not even sure I'm impressed with this person anymore.
And they might be feeling, you don't know the dynamics between the people sitting in front of you, and panel interviews are becoming increasingly common. So it might be that someone is sitting there and thinking that they would like to ask a question, but they don't feel they can because perhaps they're the most junior person on the panel, or perhaps the HR person is leading the interview and the other person's not getting a chance to ask questions. And that could be very frustrating. And then you think about how they're then feeling emotionally. And then if you don't give them eye contact on top of that, they feel completely excluded and they're not going to feel connected with you. So if that is the case, if things are not being shared out in terms of questions with the panel, you will have to do extra work to get connected.
Exactly. And if you think about it, they're there for a reason, which means they've got a vote, which means you want them on your side. And actually you've got a real potential win there with the quiet person, that if they've got some influence, they've got a vote in the ballot of you, but they're not particularly leading the interview. You give them a bit of eye contact candy, you've probably just won the vote. So the way this works is get a question from somebody, give them some of your eye contact candy as you start to answer. Okay, well, actually back 5 years ago, I was working with a team. So start the answer. Then as you continue your answer, you spread the love, spread the candy. And then you might want to come back to that person at the end who's asked you the question to finish with them, unless you don't like the questions they're asking you, in which case you might keep your candy on the other panelists who might be, if you've got good cop, bad cop playing out, you might start your eye contact with bad cop. But you might think, I'll finish my candy donation on good cop and hope that encourages them to ask me. So you can use your eye contact. Control, exactly. So I love that one. So eye contact. So I think those are our main.
I think on the next podcast, what we're going to look at is we'll do a little piece on impact, although we do talk about impact an enormous amount on the 40 Human Being podcast. The main thing we're going to do on the second episode of these 2 episodes for interview skills and techniques is we're going to really dive into specific questions and how to answer them and how not to answer them. And generally really thinking about some of the pitfalls that we fall into as interview candidates.
I'm going to give one last tip. If you're in the room, this is harder online, of course, although you can shift your body language a little bit online sometimes. You can maybe just just want to get a little bit of movement in, because what we don't want is battle lines drawn. So
it's not a tennis match, is it? It's not
exactly. Yeah. You don't want that feeling of confrontation, because if anything slightly goes wrong, that's going to be really heightened in that situation. You want this to feel like, again, I sort of go back to something like counselling or therapy, or sort of even, being with a good friend. You'd probably sit more either side by side, or you'd sit on an angle with somebody. You probably wouldn't sit directly facing them. So if you're in the room, a really lovely piece, we do a whole piece, don't we, on sort of table and room magic. As you walk in, here's a really nice tip. As you walk into a room, if it's in person and there's a chair sat in front of the interview table and the other people are on the other side of the table, a really lovely thing you can do to have incredible subliminal signals around your control and your ownership is just before you sit on the chair, from behind it, just lift it slightly and just shift it slightly on an angle, and then go and sit on it. And you have now taken control and ownership of this room. This is your chair. You'll put it where you need to sit, not where it's been put for you. And you've already leveled the playing field. There are these lovely techniques. And if you do have something that you're carrying, then gently put it on the table, and then just push it slightly an inch forward. And again, you're saying,
this is my space.
This is my space. Yeah. I'm comfortable in this territory. Yeah. So there's lots of things you can do using the space that says, I belong here.
Yeah.
I'm one of you.
Yeah.
And I'm right with you.
Yeah.
So that's our first one on interview skills.
We could say.
Yeah. And I would say enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to share, hopefully, things that everyone in the room is really passionate about.
I remember going for an interview so many years ago. So I was working in a large organisation at the time, and I was thinking about moving back to the UK, and I went for an interview. It was with a very well-known advertising agency. And the guy who interviewed me, he was very senior. I think it was like the second or third interview. And of course I had the benefit of, you and, all the work and everything. So I kind of felt quite relaxed in the interview. And he said to me, about 20 minutes in, he said, why aren't you nervous? And I thought, because every single person he's interviewed
has been nervous.
Yeah. And it felt weird to him.
Yeah. What a good differentiator.
I know.
Okay, so we'll leave you on that. Be the person they're sitting there thinking, wow, this is the first person who hasn't been nervous today. This is interesting. Yeah. So go and enjoy. We'll be with you on our advanced interview techniques in our second podcast. If you have one coming up, all the best of luck. Own that space, own that room, have your stories ready, and enjoy every moment of it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 40 Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 40 Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D on-demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.